6 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. If Phil can lead us in prayer.
Let us pray. Our most kind and gracious Heavenly Father, God, we thank you, Lord, for this another day. We thank you for all the blessings of life that you've granted us. God, we thank you for the privilege we have, Lord, to live and to work in this community. Lord, and just as we go into this meeting tonight, God, I ask that you would guide us as we make decisions and as we think of what's best for this community, and that we always approach our service with the heart of a servant, Lord. Now go with us the rest of this evening. Lead, guide, and direct us. And please grant us traveling graces back to our homes tonight. These favors and blessings we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Amen. If everyone will join us in the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next is to consider the agenda for adoption. There are no changes. I have a motion. A motion by Linda. Please vote. Carries 5-0. Next is item 5, to consider for adoption the following meeting minutes. A work session meeting of June 4th, 2019. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
And second.
Please vote. Carries 5-0. Next item B, special called meeting of June 4th, 2019.
I'll make the motion.
Please vote. Carries 5-0. Item C, executive session meeting of June 4th, 2019.
I'll make a motion.
Please vote. Carries 5-0. Item 6, there is none. Item 7, old business. A, administration. Item 1, emergency management ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, at the work session earlier this month, which you just approved the minutes for, we presented the emergency management ordinance update that's modeled after the Georgia Municipal Association ordinance. I don't know if you have any questions about it now that you had a chance to review it and look over it, but it is up for your consideration tonight.
Have any questions or discussion? Have a motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the emergency management ordinance.
Second.
Please vote. Carries 5-0. Next is item 2, the IGA with Forsyth County for road maintenance.
Same, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this was presented to you for your consideration at your work session. This is the one that we discussed would bring certain roads within the jurisdiction of the city that are currently not within the jurisdiction of the city, and then others it would provide for the county. Now that you've had a chance to review this and review all the attachments and see what all the city would be taking on, it's up for your consideration whether you wish to approve it or reject it.
Kevin, would this be relieving them of all to do with those roads?
Yes, to the extent that it provides for the city to take on, so for example, 2A says the city will maintain all of Mary Alice Park Road east of State Route 400. Well, the city's limits do not extend past Sanders. I think that's where we end on that road. And there is a lot of Mary Alice Park Road that extends past Sanders, goes all the way out to Mary Alice Park. And on both sides of the road there, you're in the county, that's county jurisdiction on both sides. And as you are aware, you know, we have long thought that the county had some stormwater issues already on that portion of the road. And so, but according to this, the city would take on the responsibility for that road as well as all the infrastructure maintenance and everything else that goes along with it. This appears, and I mentioned this at your work session, there is a lot in here that the city is taking on much more than what the county is taking on in terms of dealing with these roads. In a lot of places where right now you do not have any responsibility for the maintenance of the road, you would be taking on a lot of responsibility you currently don't have.
So this agreement was drawn up all by the county, right?
No, we made some suggestions. We had some changes to it, but the county's red line version that came back this is what they want to see approved.
So we've already sent them something we would agree to.
For example, the Mary Alice Park Road portion of it, Councilman Lott specifically said that we would be responsible for everything essentially west of Sanders. So coming back into the city, but then going out into the county, it would be the county's jurisdiction. The red line that we got back from the county, their changes made it this.
I mean, I don't think having an agreement's a bad idea. It's just that this one, so I didn't know I was going to suggest looking at it and suggesting something we could live with, something different. But if we've already done that, I don't know.
Well, when I say we've done that, it's been a while. I mean, this has been an issue that was negotiated probably maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. And then it was something that was picked back up fairly recently. If you want us to go back with some changes, we can certainly do that. You can, instruct us to work with Scott and with Hugh to see what makes more sense.
So
I
the,
don't-
Changes would you want to make?
Well, I think we should just outline what the law requires, but make it in an IGA to where everybody knows. Right? So that way you don't run into a situation pointing fingers at each other saying, this is yours, that's yours. The law says something and Kevin knows what it is.
Yeah.
And I think you could draw the roads that we are required by law to maintain, and we just put it in an IGA form so where it's open and we know, everybody knows whose is whose.
I
The
just
law
think they've
says
stepped
if we're
over
on-
too far here.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the county stepped over too far.
That's
here.
what I'm
So we
saying.
so we would need to make a motion to deny this IGA and go back to renegotiate with them or something, right?
Yes, and just so you know what the law requires, the law says if you're on both sides of the street, it's yours. If you're only on one side of the street,
county's.
it's the county's.
So why don't
We've
we,
already done this and kind of picked out what we're legally responsible for, correct?
No, ma'am, I didn't go through and say what you're legally responsible for, what you're not legally responsible for. My point was that this document makes you legally responsible for a lot more than you are currently responsible for. If you were to adopt this, you are taking on a significant mileage burden that the city does not currently have under state law.
Then why would we adopt it?
Right.
well, that's what
I
I'm,
don't think we should.
Yeah,
I'd
what
like-
what would
I'd-
benefit from this?
Nothing.
Other than having just a very clear IGA that says we're responsible from here to here and the county's responsible from there to there, there's not, I don't think there is a ton of benefit. I'll also say this, and I understand that, certainly nobody in the city is going out looking for properties to be annexed. But to the extent you do annex property, every time you do it, you're going to be creating different issues. Maybe sometimes you're on one side, maybe sometimes you're now on both sides. And so this is a document that would have to be living, would have to be continually updated.
Which that's the case anyways though, right? Because if you annex, then it happens to be both sides, it automatically becomes our
That's my
responsibility,
point, is
right?
that, or if you just simply fall back on what state law requires, then it's really just a matter of making sure that everybody understands where we are and where we're not. The county does an excellent job every single time we do an annexation of pointing out whether or not we're now on both sides of the road. It's in every 5-day letter we get. Scott sees them, I know the mayor's seen them recently. Every time we get a 5-day letter from the county, because they have to give us some information within 5 days, it very clearly points out if it's now our responsibility to maintain that
So
road.
you didn't write this?
No, I made some revisions to it, and this is what we have now.
I'd like to make a motion that we deny this IGA,
I second.
in this form, and with the understanding that if we need to go back and renegotiate with them to have, if we so desire.
If you deny this, if the council denies this, it's back in the county's court.
All right,
And if they
I
want to
make a motion
propose
we
something
deny it.
else, we'll bring it back to you.
They're the ones getting the tax dollars for doing this anyway.
Right,
It's not
that's,
something that they need to try to shove off on the city. They ain't done nothing in this city for 50 years, I can tell you that.
like I said, I make a motion that.
We had a motion by Jason and a second by Linda. Please vote. Carries 5-0 to deny. Next is item B, planning and zoning. Number 1, rezoning application 2018-310.
Let me go ahead and state that I'm going to have to recuse on this application item.
Mr. Mayor, this was a rezoning item that came before you. The applicant presented it on June 4th at the work session. I had asked for some updated conditions and stipulations as well as design guidelines and standards, which they've provided. However, I think you've probably just recently seen that information. I put together a staff report if you'd like me to read that into the record before we open this for a public hearing, but it is scheduled for a public hearing as well as your consideration tonight on the rezoning.
Anyone like for Scott to read it? We'll go with what you're reading in front of you. Do I have a motion to go into public hearing?
Second.
Please vote. Carries 4-0 with Councilman Light abstaining. Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of rezoning application 2018-310?
Mr. Mayor and members of the council, I'm Emily Lipscomb. I'm here on behalf of Linwood Development Group LLC in this rezoning application for a rezoning from Highway Business, HB, to the new PRUD that you have approved for a zoning district in the city. This is from tax parcel 152-033, which will consist of a mixture of 336 multifamily units and commercial consisting of a full-service hotel with up to 300 rooms. We've submitted conditions and guidelines, and at your last meeting, we took a good bit of your time, and we're glad to go through as much of that as you'd like again here tonight. If there are specific questions which you have, we're glad to answer those. We have the same team that we had before with Woody here with us and with the two advisors that he has with respect to the hotel. But I don't want to take up all of your time on something that you've already seen. So if you would, if you have something specifically that you'd like to see, we're glad to show that. Otherwise, I'll sit down and wait and see if there are questions. Thank you.
Anyone have any questions or comments from Mr. Lipscomb? Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this rezoning application? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition to this rezoning application? Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make a motion.
Please vote. Carries 4-0. Any questions or discussion?
I think we looked at this pretty thoroughly.
So Kevin, what the letter from Linwood, what actually causes that to be a binding?
Which part of it, Mr. Mayor?
Well, the entire zoning stipulation letter.
Well, this would be something that you would certainly have adopted into, this would be something that you would include as part of the zoning conditions. The entire package of materials that you get, when you get a PUD, everything that you receive is going to be something that your planning and zoning department will, from that point forward, go back and look at when it comes to making sure that they're complying with the zoning you put on it. So every PUD is going to be unique. I will mention, I do think that I need to mention, and that there, and I don't believe it's covered in here, there were some conditions that were dealing with the development of the hotel parcel, which has still not been completely worked out between the developer and Northside and the city. And so that has not, I have not seen anything on that. I did have a conversation with the council for Linwood, I think it was at Morris, I'm sorry? Kevin Moore, but we still haven't seen the final product on that particular issue yet. So I think it's fine to hold your public hearing, but until we get that final issue worked out, I don't think this is ready for your approval at this point.
And what's the problem?
There are some conditions about the phasing of and some guarantees the city is looking for when it comes to making sure that the hotel parcel is going to be developed for hotels or otherwise a commercial use, so that we don't end up in a situation, and please understand, I don't think these developers are trying to do this, but when Marketplace Commons was developed, there is a commercial piece of property over there at Marketplace Commons that is still vacant. It has been sitting there, it has not been developed, there is nothing that's going on with it. And the only thing that the developer did for that piece of property, they came in, they built their residences, and they're fine residences, but there's a piece of commercial property over there that was supposed to be developed that never was. And so we've been working on something with the city so the city could get a better comfort level that this is going to be commercial at some point.
Yeah. So what I've asked them for is that Northside Hospital is saying that they'll, if a hotel doesn't happen, they'll buy the property and put medical office on it. So what we're after is an agreement that's showing that, and then if Northside were to fall out, then it gives the city's development authority the first right to, we're just looking to guarantee that something commercial is happening, we're not just getting residential and no commercial. So, and I'm fine with that, waiting until we get.
Somebody else speak.
I just wanted to, Mayor, as you've said, we've agreed to that. Linwood has agreed to that.
We just don't have that agreement, and we'd ask for that to be worked out with our council.
And Kevin, we had a excellent conference call with Kevin Moore, and all the parties were in agreement. My understanding from our council, Kevin Moore, was we were supposed to get through tonight before that agreement was executed and signed. We didn't have any open issues on the DDA agreement, as I call it.
That's,
And
Mr. Moore, I mean, Mayor, Mr. Moore knows this, and that's not correct. And we did have a conference call, that's true, and I've had multiple conversations and communications written as well with Mr. Moore since then. And I've been very clear, this is something the city has to have, and it's not going to be a zoning condition, and I just don't have anything on it. I've been very clear about this.
It's news to me. I talked to
I-
Kevin Moore an hour ago, and he knows exactly where I'm at right now. And my understanding on this was that we're supposed to finalize tonight, and then that get done. All I would ask you is there any way that you would consider taking action on the zoning and putting a stipulation in that we can't submit any permits, we can't do anything on this project until this agreement that the city attorney's referencing is fully executed?
Can you have that agreement done in the next 2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Then we can take it up for a vote at the work session in 2 weeks. And we'll be meeting again in 2 weeks.
I can't, my advice to the city council is for legal reasons that it not be something that's a stipulation. Sorry, but
I mean, we've been asking for that for quite a while, so.
months.
We can leave that open. There's an open one. Just- Mayor, as I understand, you're saying this would be just kept open for 2 weeks and to see if that has been accomplished. And when you have your work session, then you could act on it at that time.
That's what I'm saying. We can bring this up for a vote at the work session.
Yes, sir.
That-
Thank you.
As long as we've got that agreement to make that part of it.
And that's the final thing you need, right?
Right. So I have a motion to postpone till the work session.
I'll make a motion to postpone based on council's advice.
Second.
Please vote. Carries 4-0.
Mr. Mayor, one thing I would add is, as I said, you've got a lot of information that was presented in your packet tonight, some of which has been drawn from different sources, some of which you've seen, but some of which you may haven't. So I would suggest between now and the work session in 2 weeks to review that thoroughly. And we'll, at that time, assuming the agreement's been done and it comes back up before we at the work session, I'll have some probably amended comments at that time.
Yep.
All right.
Council good with that? Next is item 2, rezoning city center.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this also is before you tonight for a public hearing. The question before you is whether to put a zoning on your city center property of institutional, which is consistent with all of the other zonings of city-owned property throughout the city, or to put a zoning on it of office commercial multi-story. This is for a public hearing tonight, but the thing that I would suggest coming at this from the legal side of things would be that you would put an institutional zoning on this, but when you're putting your institutional zoning on it, that you do specifically allow all the conditional uses that we put into your zoning ordinance effective last month. That would make sure that at the city center you could have business service establishments, commercial recreational facilities, indoors and outdoors, things like banks and insurance agencies if they want to locate an office there, personal service establishments if somebody wanted to put a barber shop there or something along those lines, they'd be able to locate that there, as well as retail trade establishments. But it's before you tonight for that decision, how to zone it, whether to zone it as a institutional zoning or to zone it office commercial multi-story.
Have a motion to go into public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Please vote. Carries 5-0. Is there anyone that would like to speak about rezoning of this portion of the city center? Is there anyone that'd like to speak in opposition to? Have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Please vote. Carries 5-0. Questions or discussion?
Pretty straightforward. Anybody? I'll make a motion to approve the zoning as presented in our book.
I'll second that.
Don't you have to have a choice? You need,
If you just make a
Oh, I
motion
thought-
to zone it institutional with each of the conditional uses currently allowed, that would suffice.
So moved.
Second.
please vote. Carries 5-0. Next is item C, utilities. Number 1, purchase of Skag mower.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, see if I can explain this. We had a bid that came last month. Kevin, can you help me with it just that first part, explain that. Okay.
So last month, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you approved, you considered, and you ended up approving the purchase of a Skag mower. What Mr. Hurd has brought to our attention tonight, or he's bringing to your attention tonight, is that the bids that all the bids you received, not all of them were submitted properly. And so what he's asking you to do is and since then, the city has re-advertised for this same mower, has gotten all new bids in. And so what he's asking you to do tonight, at least in the first part, is because the bid that was approved was not even properly received by the city, your award of that is voidable. So he's asking you to void that approval and then reject all the former bids. You can do that in one motion, and then you have the new bids for consideration.
Of a motion to void and
Reject and avoid.
reject.
Make a motion.
Please vote. Carries 5-0.
That's perfect, thank you. I knew Kevin could explain that better than I could. So we did take that bid and put it back on the state procurement website, and we received 3 bids of the same people. They just rebid. In fact, they bid different prices, so some were lower and some were higher than their original bid. So the 3 bids are before you. We have Low Country JCB from Pooler, Georgia, in the amount of $13,020. We have Howard Brothers Incorporated from Alpharetta, Georgia, in the amount of $13,347. And then we have Sosby Auto Supply in Lawrenceville, Georgia, in the amount of $13,428. So the low bid, the apparent low, is from Low Country JCB in Pooler, Georgia. We can accept the low bid, or we can go with one that's just a few dollars more, and more of a local bid. And I'll leave it up to the council. I know I had a suggestion that we might choose a more local company, and that would be the one from Alpharetta.
So do they charge shipping?
Yeah, I was about to say.
You know,
Do we have to go get it?
that's a good question. I don't know. When we asked for the bids, though, I would say that was the bottom line bid, was what they submitted to us, which would include shipping.
It's a lot closer if you need any maintenance on it.
And that was our thought, too, is if we could accept the one from Alpharetta in the amount of $13,347, it's about $327 more than the one down in Pooler.
What was the original one that we just rejected? Do you remember?
That's a good question.
Because you
I
said
did
some of
not
them
bring
came in
it.
lower. I was just wondering.
Within
I
the
can't
same,
remember.
within $100 of, that's a good question. I don't have that with me.
That's okay.
It's within $100 of what this low bid is here, so.
I think service work and so forth would be a lot closer to buy the Howard Brothers at Alpharetta.
Okay.
Even if we needed to get a part for it or whatever, send it back for something, it'd be a lot cheaper for us to send it back out.
We could get there quicker, that's for sure, than Pooler, Georgia, which is down on the coast, so.
I mean, does the Skag, do they won't service it if you don't buy it from them?
That's a good point. I'm sure any Skag dealer would service the Skag, so.
That's true.
So I don't know that part would matter.
So they are offering delivery. You think that's
They are.
in the number?
So what's the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion we buy it from the Howard Brothers at Alpharetta.
I have a second.
Second.
Please vote. Carries 5-0. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Next is item 8, new business administration, number 1, the GMRC reappointment of Robert Long.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. The purpose of this item is to make a recommendation for a private sector representative to the GMRC council. We already have an elected member that's a member of the council, and Councilman Evans. We do need to make a recommendation for this private sector member. Mr. Long has graciously held this position and done this for us for several years, and he's agreed to do it again in the upcoming year if it's the pleasure of the board. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
I'll make a motion that we reappoint Mr. Long as our Public Representative, JMRC.
Second.
Please vote. Carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Next is item B, planning and zoning, application for alcohol license for Cumming Cigar.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. The city's in receipt of an application for an alcohol license for the business of Cumming Cigars. It's going to be located in the old Sinclair station at 203 East Main Street. They've applied for the sale of malt beverages and wine. According with the ordinance, we've conducted our background check on the applicant, and he's met all the requirements, paid all the fees due the city. There would be nothing to hold him back from getting the license, and the applicant, Mr. Bennett, is here, should anybody have any questions. It's my recommendation that we approve the license for that business.
I'd make a joke, but I'm not going to. That was background, but
No.
any questions or discussion?
These aren't public hearings, are they, Kevin? Kevin, these aren't public hearings, are they?